Welcome to Tech to Table, Growing Cleveland's Future, a 5-part podcast series showcasing the Precision Urban Agriculture Initiative led by the Ohio Aerospace Institute in partnership with Parallax Advanced Research and with financial assistance awarded via SONAN D24D146 from the U.S. Department of Commerce, National Institute of Standards and Technology. This podcast is hosted and produced here at the School of Communication in the Levin College of Public Affairs and Education, and is designed to inform, inspire, and engage Cleveland's urban farmers, technologists, and community leaders. Each episode highlights the role of innovation in local food systems, lifting up both historical context and present-day tech demonstration projects. In this first episode, Planning the Future, we're kicking off the series by taking a close look at the Precision Urban Agriculture Initiative right here in Cleveland, what it is, who's involved, and why it matters for our city's future. I'm your host, Anthony Gillespie, the Director of Strategic and Technology-Based Partnerships and Technology Transfer Office at Parallax Advanced Research and the Ohio Aerospace Institute. I have over 34 years of experience leading programs in technology transfer and commercialization across government, academia, and industry. I'm also the Program Director on this Urban Agriculture Initiative. I'm thrilled today to be joined by Dr. Stephanie Brooks, the inaugural Dean of Cleveland State University's new College of Health. She seeks opportunities to eliminate health disparities, promote health equity, and build an inclusive workforce prepared to make that difference through education, research, practice, and service. Dr. Brooks, welcome. I'm sure this hits really close to home for you as far as really your interests, your research, and as far as the work that you're doing here.
Yeah, no, actually, it aligns both professionally and personally for me. From a professional perspective, definitely looking at public health and community well-being. From a personal perspective, my youngest daughter was an environmental science major, bio major. Decided that she didn't want to go into the lab. Um, in her undergraduate degree, started, getting involved with indigenous farming and is now in a PhD program at Rutgers in geography. So we come from a family of farmers from the South. So it's been really cool to watch her sort of organically remember what her grandmama taught her, it's personal too. And we definitely share this space together, which has been really nice as it's evolved over the past couple of years.
Yeah, and that's the experience. I mean, kind of coming back similar as far as my family,
Yeah.
migrating here from the South on my mom's side, my dad's side. Typically it was, farming.
Yeah.
That's what we did. And then we came to the North
Mhm.
and became, moved more towards the industrial side. And it's funny how things could come in full circle where you see now urban farming is a thing. So,
Right.
really, and the definition is I would say as far as what we're seeing, it varies, but it really comes down to bringing ag back to areas where you typically wouldn't see it.
Right.
And so I'm just curious from your viewpoint, just what do you see as far as how would you define it with respect to urban farming?
So I think about urban farming as a way for the community to take control of their food source. I think that's a really important factor that the community really could um, make decisions about their own food preferences. And so that's really at the forefront of how I think about the benefits of urban farming as something that I believe should be owned by the community and driven by the community, and places like CSU and government uh, should be of service to the community to help facilitate that process. And as you know, it's really complicated, right? Because we're in a city, a lot of commercialization has happened. We have issues that we have to deal with, like the soil and site cleanings and all the regulations that go along with it. So, um, a second thing I believe is that's the urban farming promoting is public health and well-being. Food is at the core of our well-being. And we, in a lot of cities, have food deserts and food swamps. And I was really excited about the recent opportunity that's coming up around the vertical gardens because I see that as an additional resource and an add-on to some of the farms and gardening that's taking place in greenhouses across the city. So from that standpoint, I really look at urban farming and fresh food that's accessible to the community that is not only feeds them safely, but also provides nutritional security, which is different than food security, right? Because you're deal talking about hunger with food security, food for food's sake. But when you really start looking at the continuum of disparities, I think urban farming provides an opportunity to shift that narrative to nutritional security.
Right, right. And there's a lot there that you mentioned as far as Stephanie, as far as just the definition for urban farming, kind of the food preference piece. And then also the promotion piece as far as really kind of getting the word out. You mentioned nutritional, security versus food security. And so there's a lot there. So just kind of drilling down a little bit more as far as the food preference piece. We'll go down that path here first. Um, you mentioned it's driven by the community. And so we've seen a number of efforts here. Typically, there are grassroots efforts that we're seeing, but how can the community, if I'm a community stakeholder, how can I make an individual impact and maybe with respect to my local area, but how can I make bigger impact? How can those folks, if you're giving them advice, how can they continue to really get involved.
Right.
And then also, I guess the bigger piece is, they're one part of the picture, but how can now they be a bigger part of the whole? Are you seeing some opportunities there? And if so, where can they go?
So that's a big question. It's a great question. Um, so let's try to dial it back. Some I think that for anyone who wants to get involved, you got to sort of think about the scope. I mean, I think this, but also urban farming provides an opportunity for individuals who want to be entrepreneurs or to stand up a small business. So that's one way that individuals can be involved. And if they are interested in doing that, I think institutions in the city, educational institutions, health institutions, government should make it to send clear messages of how they can be of service to those individuals because it benefits everyone. I mean, we're talking about health, not just food, but health. And so oftentimes I find that uh, individuals in the community who are interested in doing this work run into roadblocks because they don't necessarily have um, a picture of how to navigate the um, the legal system, the housing, land rights, and all those things. So that is one way I think they could be involved. And then I think about the opportunities for individuals. There are all kinds of there are farms here in Cleveland. There are farms all over to start to go out and visit those farms and find some mentors, learn about what they've done, lessons learned, sort of thing. And so, but in terms of precision urban farming, it's an opportunity to venture in another direction, or to broaden the resources around food source, I should say. That's so partnering with educational institutions, health organizations, really with the folks in the community taking the lead on standing up an urban farm of any kind, I think would be important. Those institutions can help um, the community facilitate their process and meet their goals. Um, those institutions should be meeting those individuals where they're at. and finding out what their needs are. But we need to get to the table. And so, yes, some people would say community members reach out to institutions. I believe it should be the other way around. We should be reaching out to people who've demonstrated or shown some interest and say, "What do you need? How can I support you? How can we be of service to you?" Um, and bring a number of stakeholders to the table who are able to help that person ramp up their business or stand up a farm or beautify a lot and feed their community or whatever their goal may be.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point you made here as far as really kind of the role for educational institutions. You mentioned as far as with respect to, urban agriculture, as far as opportunities to educate on the entrepreneurial track
Mhm.
and really for community stakeholders to come to them and rely and I guess leverage the resources that are there
Mhm.
with respect to business education. It could be entrepreneurship. It could be in the technical areas as far as drilling down and figuring out how to increase their outputs. Those all could be opportunities there. The interesting aspect I don't think a typical urban farmer, or even a farmer in general, would think about is kind of more the piece of working with health
Yeah.
institutions and food as a
Yeah.
source to really create health and wellness.
Mhm.
And so that's a whole nother area in itself. And I
Mhm.
think we just generally, as Americans, and I know as I get older here, you become more cognizant of what you eat. When you're young, you're not taught typically, and as Americans, we typically don't think about what we consume could have an impact. And so that whole piece, and it kind of comes down to what you mentioned as far as the nutritional security versus the food security piece,
Mhm.
is key. And then how do you promote things around public health? And so I guess I'm curious along those lines. We transition a little bit, but I love the piece that you mentioned as far as Stephanie. Hey, there's for community members. Think about it as far as opportunities to learn from a collaborative standpoint, but also you can also contribute as far as helping folks from a wellness standpoint
Right.
and
So,
promoting that piece.
yeah. So my brain is firing off in different directions because this is the space that I've been giving a lot of thought to of how to position the College of Health to be a leader in that space. Um, as I said, food. We all need food, and but food is definitely health. It disrupts chronic disease, as you said. It prevents disease, and not everyone has the opportunity of to learn about vegetables and fruits and ways in which food can be nutritious and really um, not only satisfy your hunger, but provide you with vitamins and buffers against disease. And so, uh, one of the things that I believe is important here too, and it's a tricky thing because while you want to promote nutritional security, I think it's also important to respect the culture around food. I mean, food defines cultural traditions, celebrations, um, and so, and I don't think we're there yet. I think we need to sort of figure out how to respect the community and their culture. That's why I say their food of preference, and then work with them around that. So, if I remember, my mother was a diabetic, and it sort of evolved. In the beginning, it was like take oral medication, and she wasn't always good about doing that, and she still continued to eat her food. You know the story, and then she was on insulin, and so then she would play with her insulin and eat her food, and she had high blood pressure. So and then it became heart disease. So the trifecta, um, and so she would eat and cook cleaner, without pork or meat or a lot of salt uh, between holidays or between celebrations. But when the celebrations came, Christmas time, Thanksgiving, Easter, it was full on. I'm going to cook in the ways in which I learned how to celebrate and that people were expecting to cook, which wasn't good for her diabetes and high blood pressure and so forth. And so there was always this boomerang effect. Um, Helping people navigate that really, this is what's it, meeting people where they're at. I'm a therapist, so change is slow. And so sometimes people make 3 steps forward and take 2 back. And we as health providers, as health institutions, as policymakers need to really understand that change is slow. And but there are a lot of things that I know that I still eat foods that I grew up on, and I learned how to cook them differently. Even when my mother would taste it, she's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that you put this in your greens. They were like spicy." So she didn't realize that was in my greens or what have you. So teaching people that they can still eat their foods and how they can cook them differently. Um, and I think that is really important. A lot of kids don't really get introduced to vegetables and fruit. I mean, we talk a lot about it. I know there's school gardens but I see a lot of kids in the city. It's all in Philly. I see it here. They would stop at the corner store or the poppy store in the morning, and they're eating food from the store that's processed, and they're not really into vegetables. So introducing kids to vegetables really young, vegetables and fruit, and so introducing them to farming. One Another way that I think about it, particularly in the community, of that urban farms can grow food, but I think there are other types of programming, and you see this in farms and urban farms in Detroit and in Philadelphia, the farm there, Sankofa, where they have camps for kids during the summer. They come in, they are not only teach them how to grow food. This is in the Black community in Philadelphia, how to grow food, where food comes from. They get involved in the farming aspect of it, but they also teach them the history of food that, that is adjacent to their culture. And for some of those kids, this is the first time they've really been introduced to their history, the history of food. Um, where did this come from? What's okra? I don't like okra. Yeah, and uh, food is the source of pride as far as I'm concerned when I really sort of start thinking about the historical piece. So I really think that I would like to see us do more with food as health uh, in our health promotions program. I think that's a place where we could be intentional about what we teach to students and how we teach them to work with individuals in the community, any individual. Um, I also think that, um, and this is something that's becoming more important, that folks are starting to value the importance of interdisciplinary work and transdisciplinary work. Urban farming, it brings together individuals from, I see it as bringing individuals together from different disciplines, right? So here, the farm bot, we have engineering students, we have biologists, we have health educators, um, but also, um, you know, you we need culinary experts at the table. We need medical professionals at the table. We need chemists at the table. Um, we need all those individuals because there's a piece of nutrition that's attached to, or those individuals have an expertise around. And if we're gonna, if we're gonna solve big problems like hunger and nutrition, and urban farming is not a big problem, but it's it requires an an appetite and a commitment and resources to advance it for. We need many stakeholders at the table from a lot of disciplines. So I call it intersectional actors, sort of thinking about the different industries. So transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary providers in the health space, science space, engineering, but also thinking about industry and other folks thinking about intersectional actors to come in. Um, we don't in our nutrition science programs, we teach Western medicine still. We know better. We know better. We talk about it. Um, but the accrediting bodies of a lot of our programs say this is what you teach. And depending on who's involved in the program or who's providing leadership, some programs stay within that box as and really are afraid to innovate or um, take a much more what I call a community culturally responsive approach to what it is that they're teaching. We're turning out when we turn out practitioners, we're turning out they're working in hospitals. So, you need to understand why this person is saying to you, I don't want to eat this. Um, and it's not appealing to me at all. And be able to um, figure out within your resources if you're in the hospital system, you know, how to get them food that is going to fuel them that they need for their recovery, and how to respect their wishes, and as opposed to saying they're non-compliant, which is where we go typically. The patient's being non-compliant. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, and the challenge, I think you mentioned kind of a couple of things here, and I'm going to drill down a little bit.
Okay.
Uh, Going back to really the piece as far as the educational piece, and I guess as far as with respect to urban ag and just young people, and just in general, as far as understanding food and where it comes from, and then how it potentially could help as far as from a wellness perspective. The challenge is even if you bring the education to the young people, and we know as far as, our culture, as far as things and other cultures as well, it's one thing to teach them about it, and the child knows it, and maybe even the child starts down that path. But if they go back home and their guardian is doing something different, that's probably going to really take over and influence where they go.
No.
And so all of that education as far as health and wellness and the nutrition of food could really go out the window. And so the other piece is also probably reaching out, and as far as one role that maybe urban farming can take and that whole ecosystem can take is bringing others in and helping them learn as far as, there's a nutritional aspect, there's a wellness aspect behind it, and pulling them in. And so how do we go down that path? That's kind of one question there. You start there, and I agree. But how do we go down there? And maybe you've seen some examples of models that have happened along that path.
Yeah, I've seen models, I've seen models in within food and outside of food. So you're absolutely right. And this is the thing um, about change and working with children and kids. They do not have the power at home, right? So they learn things, they go back home. In therapy, they come in, they're learning things. If you're seeing them individually, they go back home. And so it was one of the reasons I gravitated towards couple and family therapy because it's a systemic approach to working with individuals. So I know that if I'm working with a kid or a kid is presented to me, change is not going to happen unless I bring those adults into the room or engage them in some kind of way. So, um, with food, we definitely need to have engagement with the adults in the community as well. One way to do that is cooking. Um, and cooking is a wonderful opportunity to create a shared space. People learn cooperation, and but they also learn that they can learn about the food. Uh, and so So urban gardens, and I know that there are gardens, urban farms, and I know that there's some farms across the country where they have kitchens, and they right, or they have a connection with a place, and they also provide cooking classes or opportunities for people to cook and fellowship together. Because that's the other piece, and I'll come back to that if I remember. I have a colleague who is in New York. She was just recently recognized for her work. She is one of my former doctoral students. She's a couples therapist. She developed a model for couples to work on their relationship through cooking. Um, and it's not anything that's new, but she's refined the way that she's been doing that work, and it has really taken off, and people have had an interest in it. And if you really, I really think about it, there was a certain way in which depends on whose kitchen you're in. It was their rules of how you needed to behave in that kitchen. So if you're gonna cut this, you're gonna cut it like this. This is where I cut it. You cut it like that. So we all have rules, but it's a way in which people can learn about nutrition together, have them to cook together, and if it's a community, have them to cook together, have them to fellowship and eat together, which addresses another um, risk factor, and that is isolation and loneliness that people sometimes fall into in the community. And that's from folks who don't are not leaving their house to people who are in a routine of hustling, trying to just take care of things, and they really haven't had the opportunity or the energy to expand their network. So getting folks in spaces where they fellowship together helps to reduce the risks around depression and anxiety. So um, getting people to work, if they farm work is hard, you know that. So some people can be that physically active. This is where I think precision farming, though, would be great for people who are challenged physically. They could still engage with others in a shared goal. So I would want to see uh, in um, our urban farms, really the opportunity for programming to exist that looked at food on a continuum, that grows food. Um, um, there's cooking, there's selling of foods in our communities. I mean, if we're urban farms, opportunities for food co-ops, um, that will be another way to engage the adults in the work. Um, and even volunteering, like taking the food. I we've been talking about the vertical farms here, and if we have them on campus, okay, what are we going to do with all this food? Um, well, there there are lots of places that we can take food to, whether we're talking about going into communities or institutions where aging folks are living at, shelters. But you could also develop additional activities around that those in those settings. Um, I could take a group of health profession students in the Salvation Army, let's just say, and they can do screenings too. We can get food, do screenings, and also provide some health education there and promotion. So nutritious food, but your blood sugars is off, your blood pressure is high. Um, they may have difficulty hearing and not even realize it.
Yeah, and that's real powerful. I mean, you mentioned here, and I just want to emphasize the point you're really saying. Besides just, growing within the city, there's an opportunity as far as for folks who are involved in urban ag, but even the agriculture area to really now have impact in their community.
Mhm.
They could be urban, they could be rural, they could be wherever they're at
Mhm.
if they're just thinking in terms of making that connection of, hey, now what do I do with the food? It's not always distributing it out. in most cases, they're going to have more than enough to distribute and have a business.
Right.
The other piece is then potentially how do you really get it to the table?
Right.
And then once you bring it to the table, you can actually then influence a lot more in the community. And
Right.
so there's what they call, quote unquote, that multiplier impact
Mhm.
that you have here as far as with respect to food. And I hadn't really thought about it until we had this conversation here of that multiplier effect with respect to food.
Right.
It's really, hey, one pathway is direct as far as really growing that crop
Yeah.
and then taking it to the table. But then also indirectly, it's how you helping people really intake and look at how what they're eating with
Mhm.
respect to their diet
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
partnering within the community. And that's a good way also of this challenge that in a lot of communities, they don't trust the health system. And so this is the way of kind of also looking at that barrier as well. So it's very powerful as far as what you mentioned here. Um, I don't know if you had any other thoughts there. I
No,
know
I
you.
mean, just that. I mean, just that. I mean, uh, food's relational,
Mhm.
health's relational, um, and there, there's research that the relationship that you have with your provider influences your health outcomes. So, um, when we're when I'm thinking about dealing with any kind of project, I'm thinking about what kind of relationship do we need to develop with um, the community and the stakeholders, because they're going to make or break the best built project. They will make or break it if we don't approach it in a way that's respectful of who they are and what they believe in and honors that history, like that the medical apartheid history, and that honors that. And I think that with food, one of the things I wanted to say that I've been thinking about, food has been politicized too over time, historically. So as we are infusing, as technology is more and more infused in the growing of food, it's also going to require us to message it to the community in ways and understand what their concerns might be, perceived, or unknown, long term, because I know that tape is playing, as some folks said, about, can we trust this? That food is grown in a container. Is that going to be okay for me to eat? So yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and I think you brought up one thing here, and I want to make sure we cover it is that role of technology and innovation, and how to really work with that. So, um, so I guess one of the things I'm curious about as far as that influence of technology, just your thoughts there. How can folks really take technology and really help it, or I should say, leverage it to help with respect to urban
Yeah.
agriculture? Where does it play a role? What are some of the pros and cons just as far as what you see here? And I probably asked multiple questions,
You did.
but yeah.
But that's
So,
okay.
but take your choice here where you want to go as far as that.
You did. And so the first thing I want to say, because just like we talk about disparities in food, we have a digital disparity as well. So we have to make sure that individuals in the community have access to technology that's reliable and accessible,
Mhm.
so that they can then leverage the technology around food. I think that what I mentioned earlier on in the very beginning, the whole testing soil, cleaning sites, um, costs money. It's expensive, and so I'm just gonna use like vertical gardens as an example. If we're able to position those vertical gardens in the communities that need food, and I think about precision agriculture, urban ag, as we should be really focused on probably first the people who need the food the most, where we position um, containers or what have you. Uh, and so, but that should be not just Stephanie's putting a container in this community. it should be a process in which we fully engage the communities that we're going in and saying, and I'm just making this, we're going to put this in the library. We're going to we're going to put it in the community where it's adjacent. We have to make sure that there's buy-in from the community, that they understand what it is that we're doing. If they're interested in learning about it, we need to provide opportunities for them to learn how to farm um, by using that technology. Um, Technology for individuals who really miss opportunities to socialize because they're not physically able to, this is where we could leverage technology. I really have been thinking about, and I don't have a program solidified in my mind or blueprint just yet, but I would like for our college to do more work with the aging population in Ohio. Ohio is one of the fastest aging states, and Cuyahoga County is a very aging county, and and some of us are young old like myself, and then there are older folks, but some people are really struggling with, what do I do with my time? They don't want to work, um, but they may want to come. They might want to engage in volunteer efforts, or they may want to. If we have a program at an institution, it could be courses, it could be credentials. It doesn't have to be a degree. A number of things. If we take it to them, the course, it's an opportunity for people to learn something new and engage in a different way. Most older folks want to use their brains and they want to do something good. And I think this is something that we could take advantage of. That will be a win-win for everyone.
Right, right. And you mentioned as far as the precision ag area, for seniors or someone who's physically disabled, it's a great opportunity. And I mean that hits on one thing I wanted to make sure before we close here,
Okay.
is just more the career areas,
Yeah.
the career opportunities here. And you mentioned here really, looking at tech, it can create opportunities. Leveraging tech and ag can create opportunities for the physically disabled or maybe for seniors and other populations as well.
Right.
But when we go back and you say the systematic approach, this really creates career opportunities
Hmm.
as well.
Hmm.
And so you may have some insights here, just as far as from your experience here, where, you look at urban ag and just opportunities around it, relational fields. I think it comes back to some of the points you made earlier.
Right.
Really, there's a wealth of career opportunities here. And I know as far as just looking at our state, ag is one of our big economic development areas. We
Hmm.
don't talk about it a lot,
Mm-mm.
but there's a lot of people who are doing
That's
farming.
right.
And really, when you look at the numbers for our state, it's one of our top industry areas is really ag. And so I'm just curious as far as, and you can share with me as far as maybe there's career pathways that Cleveland State and maybe your program or other programs that are doing in that area with respect to.
So I learned something new about Ohio. And so thank you for that. And because I don't think people think about urban farming as a career path for themselves. And I certainly didn't think about it until my daughter was into it. And I was like, oh, this is a real thing, huh? And um, but urban agriculture really sits, I believe, at the intersection of a number of disciplines. So one program that we just launched a new transdisciplinary PhD program in health science and technology. All right, because some of our faculty have been doing work that's at the intersection of like looking at big problems and understanding that they have to work across the university and bring knowledge together in order to address. And I think that for so long we have isolated knowledge. Like I'm a biology major. This is what I learned. I'm this. This is what I learned. Um, there are probably lots of tech people who know nothing about urban agriculture. Nothing about. They probably think food security and nutritional security are the same thing, right? Um, so that I think we have to really help people understand that their careers around water, land, soil, and their there are careers where it comes, as I mentioned earlier, around health promotion, developing programs. There are business opportunities where we can where urban ag could really be a game changer for someone who wants to do their own thing, and but I don't, and they don't need a business degree to do it, um, but they need to understand what they do need, and we can provide that with some individuals who are choosing not to go to college, which I think is fine. I think we need to be able to message to them, if you're interested in doing a certain type of work, here's the blueprint for, what's at baseline, what is needed in order to stand up a farm, um, or stand up a co-op, or whatever you want to do. I In our nutrition science programs, I think we have to think about nutrition science programs differently, and dietary different in a different way. I've always been, since even before I started in higher ed, um, I think I'm hardwired to think about the why, and understanding that I'm not going to be able to engage this person unless I really lean in and seek to understand who they are and their experience. Um, and so everything that I touch, I am doing that and making sure, or trying to make sure, and striving to make sure that we're honoring cultural practices and the community in that. So public policy, um, that's a whole area, I think, where uh, we can be more intentional about elevating urban ag in the curriculum. Part of that, part of what I guess, what as I reflect on what I'm saying in this moment, I think is having the faculty or the teachers at those institutions. Because people can't teach what they don't know about. They're not going to teach what they're going to know. Most folks teach what they're comfortable teaching, right?
Right.
So we also need to think about who we bring into the classroom. Yes, we typically bring in practitioners, folks who are working in business and industry, but I think this is bigger than that. We need a both and. We definitely need individuals who understand the landscape, are leaders in urban agriculture, and we need to partner with them and to educate the our students, um, and we need to partner with them to understand how to best stand up introductory course to urban ag. Like, what should we be teaching to these folks? And when I reflect again, I think about all my health students need to understand this in some shape, form, or fashion. And it can't be just a module or a class. It needs to be something that has more depth to it, because it's so complicated and layered. They need to understand food politics. They need to understand government, the history of urban ag. I'm beginning to read now and understand that Cleveland is something I learned, has a long history of farming and feeding Cleveland local history. Like, what happened to it? There's probably some lessons that we can learn from there. I don't know what happened to it, but I'm just starting to immerse myself to understand. Oh, we used to do this in Cleveland. What happened? For a long time, we did it, and so, but people need to understand that, and they need to understand food politics
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, we kind of started here, at the beginning, really kind of looking at, defining as far as urban ag. And, we've taken it and we looked at the pieces here, and it's a really large area just in itself. The depth as an area of study and focus, and then the reality of implementation is large here. And you mentioned as far as Cleveland. And so I guess kind of last question here is really, what can Cleveland do? What, really as far as the city or the institutions, what can they do to really drive and integrate urban ag- urban agriculture into our society here, our community footprint? What's the opportunities here? And you may have a list of kind of the top 2 or 3 here. We'll narrow it down because we know this is almost time for another podcast here, Stephanie, as far as for us.
This is really challenging, sort of, to thinking about this topic because there's so many perspectives that you can have this conversation. I think one of the big areas that we need the city of Cleveland, and so I'm talking about government, to invest in the community and urban ag, to really understand that we're not just talking about growing food, that um, we're talking about ways in which we can improve public health. So, um, my challenge, and this is where I'm at right now, is like, how can we be of service to, how can we be a part of the solution? My challenge to other institutions, health institutions, educational institutions, government, is like, how could you move this forward? What's your role? Think about your role in moving this forward. Um, we have an obligation to make sure that we have healthy people who have healthy food, who are living in a healthy environment. And so what's your piece? So I think that is the probably my biggest the message that I want to um, sort of bring it home, and is that we have to invest in it, and uh, and this is a very challenging time for all of us, and just in terms of resources are finite, but this is where collaboration makes a difference, because I can't do everything, and I know I can't do everything. I don't know everything. So what I have done since I've been here, and I'm a transplant, just coming up on my 3-year anniversary in Cleveland, so I'm new to Cleveland, is to reach out to community organizations and invite them in and say, I want to have a conversation about this topic. I want to learn about this. What's the history? Where are the needs at? What this? Oh, you do this, you do that. Oh, then I can look at where I can fill the gaps and be a bridge, be a part of the conversation where I can contribute. And we don't do enough of that. I think we need to do more of it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's good. I mean, you really said it here. Really for us, as far as this whole area, urban ag, you need an investment. More than just growing food. It's about healthy people, food, and the environment. And so, that's one of the things that we're trying to do with this project, as far as our team, is really help to try to bring those stakeholders together to look beyond just the piece as far as growing, but also bring the stakeholders together and then really have some sufficient outcomes. So definitely appreciated Dr. Brooks here, Stephanie Brooks, for this insightful conversation. And I'd like to thank our listeners for joining us on the first episode of Tech to Table, Growing Cleveland's Future. Stay tuned for more that's coming up as far as our next episode, Roots of Innovation, Cleveland's Urban Farming Legacy, where we'll explore the rich historical and cultural roots that have shaped urban agriculture in Cleveland. Until then, I'm Anthony Gillespie, and thanks for listening.